Thanks, everybody. Ready? United States Congress to restrict indefinite detention by legislating these changes. U.S. citizens and resident aliens are not eligible for indefinite detention. Indefinite detention conform with the law of armed conflict can be restricted to individuals who cannot be adequately prosecuted in the criminal justice system. Individuals can be detained for providing substantial support only if it's necessary for the completion of a terrorist plot or ongoing operation of a terrorist organization or small subgroup. All individuals classified for the prosecution by the Guantanamo Review Task Force report of 2010 not formally charged to have criminal trials. The 2013 NDAA gives the president vast powers to indefinitely detain terrorists, including U.S. citizens, and also prohibits prosecuting the detainees Guantanamo in federal court. MAC 13. 2013 NDAA allows for the indefinite detention of anyone captured anywhere in the world. The NDAA restricts prosecution in federal criminal court. And even if the government never detains U.S. citizens, the public perceives and fears that it will. Chesaning Witz 13. The fact that the norm against detention is not written into the law helps fuel perception that there is greater policy latitude than exists, easily alarming those who fear it. The counterterrorism provisions of the NDAA will harm domestic law enforcement in 3 ways. They'll undermine intelligence gathering, chill information sharing by law enforcement, and reduce cooperation with the Muslim American community. Jenkins 12. The U.S. intelligence has worked owing to intelligence gathering, policing, better information sharing, and direct community support. Al-Qaeda has not been able to sustain a terrorist campaign on American soil. The NDAA imperils that. To maintain public support, the FBI has cast its efforts of criminal investigations. Those arrested in the U.S. proved to be treacherous information. They negotiated information for leniency. Heavily exchanged information and prevented several attacks. And in an unlimited detention system, suspects would have less motivation to talk. If law enforcement might be reluctant to cooperate, for their efforts could lead to indefinite detentions. Authorities might prohibit police from participating in investigations. It will alienate communities whose cooperation is vital. In more than a third of the cases, the American Muslim community was the initial tip that led to arrest. Given that such information can now lead to indefinite detention on the basis of suspicion alone, the cooperation may decline. And the NDAA will damage international counterterrorism cooperation with our allies. Jenkins 12. Unprecedented collaboration among organizations worldwide is critical to national security. The U.S. reduces reliances on the as the U.S. reduces reliance on power projection abroad. Allies might not be willing to share information. If doing so is perceived as filling new Guantanamos. Nor will countries be willing to extradite subjects without guarantees that they'll receive trials. A consensus of experts conclude nuclear terrorism has a high probability motivation and means assist. Rule Longo 12. Protecting nuclear materials that terrorist desires based on unaccountable voluntary arrangements, weak links that make it dangerous and inadequate to prevent nuclear terrorism. There is consensus that the threat of nuclear terrorism is real. The heads of the IAEA and the UN and numerous experts have called nuclear terrorism one of the most serious and global threats to global security and stability. Four terrorists have demonstrated interest in using nuclear device. These operate to enter near states with questionable nuclear security practices. It is possible to make a nuclear device from uranium or plutonium being used for civilian purposes. There have been 18 confirmed deaths of loss of weapons usable with nuclear material. A nuclear terrorist attack against the U.S. will collapse global economy, undermine civil rights, and cause nuclear escalation leading to extinction. Daily 10. A single nuclear detonation will pose an existential threat both to our nation and world. Economic losses would soar into the trillions of dollars and would resonate throughout the global economy for years. The Dow fell 7% the first day after 9/11. How much after a nuclear terror attack? Economic costs will plunge the world into deep depression. Large segments collapse into chaos. To track down perpetrators in possession of martial military rule. It might militarize our country and unravel our Constitution. Even if no evidence emerged to indicate who was behind the citizens and democratic politicians would beg for retaliation. It's difficult to imagine any president resisting such pressures. And Mueller's statistical analysis in signing low probability terrorism is flawed. Zimmerman 9. Mueller is far too simplistic. There seems to be no analysis showing 50-50 appropriate odds for each step. 20 hurdles are not statistically independent. The odds of success for some tasks are nearly 100%. It's not difficult to put an ID in a white van and drive it. Assembling team as scientists is likely. Mueller makes elementary mistakes in risk analysis. Mueller suggests smugglers to turn in the nuclear game to authorities. Successful smugglers who not betray their customers. Indefinite detention by the NDAA undermines U.S. self-power and legitimacy. 10.8.12. The NDAA comes at the expense of rights, liberties, and values, violating international law and the U.S. Constitution. The provision is vague and leaves a large amount of room for interpretation, stating that it applies to anyone who substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States, without defining what it means. The provision shows complete disregard for rule of law, which can lead to disastrous efforts for our nation's standing. The provision grants the U.S. military power to capture any civilian in any country. And U.S. allies care more about detention than drone strikes, Bellinger 13. Civil liberties groups have taken it easy on Obama. Obama's benefited from the reluctance of Bush's critics to criticize the Democratic president. Liberals acknowledge they were willing to accept policies that would have deplored if it was Bush. We would have been more up in arms. We wouldn't trust that he was striking in a very targeted way. For the same reason, European governments who unrelented their criticism of Guantanamo have simply looked the other way as drones increase. Detention is the most damaging policy to U.S. legitimacy. Wells 11. This war has damaged America's image abroad. There is growing consensus that America has a lack of credibility as a world leader. The perceived legitimacy of the U.S. is critical because terrorism is not a conventional threat. This battle can only be won through legitimizing rule of law. Although a variety of policies have negatively impacted legitimacy, the most damaging has been detention. U.S. soft power is key to leadership to solve global warming. Advantage 12. Global warming requires American leadership. Leadership depends on how America succeeds to engage the world's leading states into cooperation for resolution of these issues. The more respected, the more diplomatic power. America's image is essential. Warming causes extinction. Comfort 13. There are multiple possible tipping points. Loss of polar ice, higher temperature reducing ocean turnover, reduces carbon absorption and storage, melting methane hydrates, and burning tropical forests. Once we get to tipping point, change can be very fast. And the detention by the NDAA undermines U.S. human rights leadership. Narine 12. The act gives the powers to detain and imprison anyone, including citizens, thereby setting aside human rights. The U.S. can no longer speak with moral authority on critical issues of human rights. U.S. leadership is key to advancing global human rights. Middleton 09. The world's losing respect for human rights and links directly to the decline of actions of the U.S. China's Zimbabwe drawing negative lessons from U.S. behavior. The role that Obama can play may be important to institutionalizing human rights. The U.S. is not the balance wheel. There is no balance wheel. Human rights spark global wars and harm the global economy. Trackman 12. Human rights violations cause significant international conflicts, including conflict violations, which cause victims or those at risk to leave, and may create conditions that result in civil war or a threat to international peace. Another externality is ideational. If one state abuses citizens, it may make it easier for another state to do so. High levels of human rights are conducive to economic growth and welfare. Growth in one state benefits other states. Solvency. Congress is the best actor to impose limits on indefinite detention. Courts will always remain differential to the executive. Hammond 12. What actions constitute substantial support have yet to be defined within the courts. Congress has provided the executive with great discretion. The executive has an incentive to over-detain, and courts will continue to afford deference to the executive. It is imperative Congress place adequate restraints. Congress is in the best position to place restraint in the executive detention authority. Congress can provide the most useful statutory definition. Second, substantial support should be limited to detention for disrupting terrorist plots or ongoing operations. Hammond 12. Congress should frame the statute in such a way that the detention of substantial support is focused on disruption. Disruption is based on the idea if an individual is detained, it will disrupt the plot. Detaining an individual will either foil the plot completely or suspend occurrence to allow authorities to gain information to stop it. In order to ensure that the detention of substantial support is preventative and protective, Congress should focus on disruption. Congress should focus on those who provide support necessary for the completion of a terrorist plot or ongoing operation of a terrorist organization and small subgroups thereof. Third, Congress should require that criminal statutes are the first resort for prosecuting terrorists, and the detention law based on substantial support is only for those cases falling outside the criminal law. Hammond 12. The criminal justice system can be adequate to prosecute terrorists. Some acts will violate criminal laws. For example, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act is subject to two limitations. First, the support must be to a designated foreign terrorist organization. If the individual provides resources to a newly formed organization before it was designated, the statute does not apply. Second, the statute only applies to conduct within the jurisdiction of the U.S. Congress should reframe the executive detention authority so that the executive may detain those who support terrorist groups but fall outside of the reach of the AEPA and conspiracy liability. Fourth, requiring criminal prosecution as first resort will reduce erroneous detentions and restore U.S. legitimacy. A fairer, more flexible detention regime will make the more effective contribution to counterterrorism. Instead of treating law of war detention as the centerpiece detention program, the government should treat criminal law detention as the first resort. Fifth, civilian courts have a proven record in prosecuting high-level terrorists. Rwanda and Walla 2013. Large international terrorism cases have been tried in Article 3 courts with over 2 decades. The government secured nearly 500 convictions. These result in convictions or guilty pleas more than 90% of the time. The Classified Information Procedures Act protects sensitive intelligence sources and methods. Ronald Walla 13. CIPA is seen as an effective tool for protecting sensitive national security information. According to a study that analyzed more than 100 cases and 300 defendants, the government has never experienced a breach. In terrorism cases, materials often include classified information. CIPA operates at pre-trial as well as trial, enabling federal courts to address this by providing redacted redacted documents, unclassified summaries, and other substitutes. Thank you.
All right, so first off, on the first advantage, why do people want to harm the United States or drop nuclear weapons on the United States?
Is that our?
That's a very big question. There's not, at least we believe that there's not one definite answer for that. There are many other causes.
So what are some of the answers then? What are some of their motives?
Okay, so they can have a misunderstanding on the part of the Western Hemisphere. They can also
Misunderstand what?
misunderstand our motives, our intentions.
What are our intentions?
I don't know what the U.S. government's intentions are. You should know. We can go to the West.
Okay. I mean, what are the intentions of your plan with this?
What are our intentions of our plan?
Yeah.
Our intentions are to free the bodies that are indefinitely detained within the Guantanamo Bay.
Okay. Why should we solve for human rights?
Why should we solve for human
Yeah.
rights? We should solve for human rights because we believe human rights is a good thing, and that it leads to many other impacts. Like
What does solving for human rights look like? How does the U.S. leadership somehow solve or obtain human rights in other countries?
Great question. I think that's the Tanay Mendelsohn Trackman evidence, which talks
Okay.
about how other countries follow the U.S. model. They also follow suit and not being
So it's
oppressive
just a
regimes.
modeling argument. So it's like a modeling argument.
Yep. Without us, there's no
Okay.
balance field.
So let's say, right, so part of your case talks about how about the perception that U.S. citizens are detained. How does your case actually change that perception when you do the plan?
That perception argument is just the preempt arguments that say the president will never detain a U.S. citizen because the public still perceive that it will.
Okay, so then how does that function? So it's just a
How does that
preempt.
function? So that means that you can't read arguments that say that the president will not detain U.S. citizens. Is
Okay.
unfair because
Does your
the public perception
does
is
your
still
plan affect anyone who's not a U.S. citizen?
What do you mean?
Like, does it affect the detention of non-citizens?
We believe our 1AC plan affects people of all races, of all cultures, and people around the world. It has a global impact.
Okay, I mean, does the legislation that you're articulating actually have a provision that
Yep.
deals with non-citizens?
Yeah, we transfer
Okay.
everybody except for the people that are involved in ongoing terrorist plots or smaller subgroup thereof in the text.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically we can't hold it.
So you only transfer people, is that point 4, the Guantanamo Task Force report? So the people who are currently classified for
Basically,
president?
to generalize our plan, we are freeing everybody except for a handful of very important people that cannot be tried at the moment and to the
Okay.
courts for X reason.
Then the next question, do you have any questions? No, okay. All right, so on the soft power, how does soft power convince other countries to change their policies?
How does soft power convince
Yeah.
other countries? That is the functional definition of soft power.
Okay. Just the convincing of other countries. Okay.
Not just convincing, setting an example.
Time.
Sort of.